Thank you. I'm glad that you were enjoying and experiencing fika here because we'll be hearing more about that this afternoon. Thanks again to Cantina for providing those delicious pastries. We will have other versions of things from them as well, and the lunch will be catered by Cantinas. So for that reason, we're going to switch the order of the presenters because Nicole is the owner and chef at Cantina, and she's busy until she can catch her breath a bit. So we're going to start with Robert. In this session, we'll be exploring with two successful Bay Area restaurateurs what it means to present Nordic foods to a Bay Area audience. So I guess implicit in our framing of this symposium as a California or Nordic California Food Symposium would be the idea that for a Bay Area audience familiar with the principles of California cuisine, freshness, seasonality, local sourcing, etc., that the presentation of Nordic-inspired foods that follow similar principles of sustainability and seasonality would resonate easily with local expectations. But what role does the idea of Nordic play in all of this? Does it matter that this is a Nordic cafe? Or is it just really about the way things are being prepared? So our first presenter is Robert Sindel, who began his professional cooking career at the National Museum of Stockholm under Master Chef Orion Klein from the restaurant Kobe, the first Michelin-starred restaurant in Stockholm. While at the museum, he cooked for the Swedish royal family and for a Nobel Peace Prize dinner. He moved to Britain to work as the chef de partie at Bailey's, one of London's oldest hotels. He cooked for Prince Charles at the Wimbledon Club. He moved to the US and quite sensibly moved to Northern California in 2008. And in 2012, he opened a fine dining restaurant named Play in San Francisco with his wife, Andrea. This restaurant described its niche as seasonal dishes with a traditional northern touch anchors the menu. Seasonal, local, and fresh is our philosophy. Choice cuts of fish and meat are served with a Nordic influence of flavor and Californian flair. I can't think of a restaurant tagline that fits our symposium better than that. More recently, Robert and Andrea have opened a new venture in Petaluma, California, about 45 minutes north of Berkeley. It's called Stockholm, and it's a restaurant that is a counter-service eatery serving globally inspired food, Swedish with Middle Eastern flavors and California influences, using local farm ingredients. On this website, they state, like the diverse streets of modern-day Stockholm, where cultures collide through an expression of food, Stockholm welcomes all humans and is family, vegan, and gluten-free friendly. When I've asked Robert about this concept, he said, "This is what I eat when I go home to Stockholm today." So Stockholm is a Michelin Bib Gourmand awarded restaurant. It's definitely worth a visit, and I'm pleased to say they will be catering our lunch tomorrow. So please join me in welcoming Robert to the podium.
Well, I have to use the microphone here, so hopefully you can hear me, all right? So it's such an honor to be here, and such an honor to be around colleagues in the same field. Even if I'm not a professor, I still have just passion of cooking, you know? So I'm gonna tell you a little bit, you know, of my background too, you know, how I ended up, a little bit of my story. So my grandmother, she worked in a very famous restaurant outside or in Stockholm called Ulriksdals Värdshus. I don't know if you heard about that. And she was the cold chef. So when I was a kid, you know, I spent some summers in the kitchen with her. And she was really, really hard. So we spent, times, our summertime in an island called Gotland, Visby. We had a summer house. And that's when she introduced me to going to the farms. And that was back in like 88. So I think, back then, I think Gotland was a little bit ahead of his game when it comes to whole Sweden. Because I've been thinking about that. It's like, oh, she took me to the farmer's market back then when I was a kid. It's like, I have not experienced that. But when more I think about that, like, it's a very special place. But I remember, we had a big garden. She loved beets. So all we did was eating beets the whole summer. And now I can't stand them. So I just remember sitting there eating, me and my brothers, oh God, another plate of beets. Nobody's looking, we're throwing them, over our shoulders, right? Yeah, but it's those memories just mean so much too, and the whole family, my family is my mom always did her, 3-course dinners, special on the holidays, and it was so intense that we used to grow up, with so strong a tradition about cooking and the love for cooking as well. So I decided to go culinary school in Sweden, and I hated it. It was like, you have to be, have a lot of tough skin, to be in the kitchen. And, I know I quit 3 times, I think. But always, the passion always got me back, or someone called me, we're in trouble. You have to get back to this kitchen right now. It's like, oh, shit. But also, when everybody has a Monday to Friday job, this simple 7 to 4 or 9 to 5, and suddenly somebody in your family becomes a chef, you're gone all the time. And you start to wonder, like, what happened, Now you're working weekends, you're working holidays, And, it takes time to get used to it. We have chefs throwing pans and pots on you. It's stories, right? But those stories are true. It was one of the days the chef's throwing a pan on me, screaming at me, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I took that pan, I threw it back to him. I was like, I quit, But in the end of the day, no one holds grudges in the kitchen, because heat of the moment, next day is a new day, and everybody is friends again. And that's the beauty of it. And the beauty of, the community of people working in the kitchen is such a beautiful thing. I still have friends in Stockholm, and, we're talking about, they're not the chefs anymore. They were smart enough to quit, right? But just to hear those stories, talk about memories is fun. So when I did a culinary school, I flew down to London, and I spent 3 years working in London, and it was one of the best experiences for me. It's the same, as Paul spent time down there. I think we were down there at the same time, So this is interesting, because Chopin White was the big name, that time. Everybody was talking about Chopin White, all the stuff he's doing, So I was everybody was fascinated by him, But after London, I went back to Sweden, working under Örjan Klein, and he was such a mentor to me. Amazing, warm, and very clever man, And I worked around, all over Stockholm, and then I started to be like, oh, I need to escape. So I started to do seasonal work because I love skiing. So now I start to travel instead to ski towns, work in a kitchen, and so I used to start to live life a little bit. But how I ended up here in the States is going to be a little story here, So I took 3 months off work from when I lived in Stockholm, And I was like, I always wanted to go to Tahoe. You know, I always wanted to see those mountains. And my first day in San Francisco, I met my wife. You know, in 1015 Folsom, if you know what that is. If you know, it's an old club here in San Francisco. And it's so funny. We were out with some American guys, and they say, like, don't date any American girls because they just want to get married and have babies. So I called them, you know, I think it was like a year after. I was like, guess what? I'm going to get married. No, she's pregnant too, you know. So, yeah. So it's funny. So it took me about 6 months. You know, back then, you know, it was hard to communicate because you didn't have your cell phones or, you know, and it took me a while to get over here. But what a travel that was, you know, because working in Sweden, and you know, my wife lived in Phoenix, and I'm going to flying to Phoenix, and that's 120 degrees, right? So it's just such a culture shock. But also, used to start working in kitchens over there that everybody was doing New Mexico cuisine, if you know, the little bit of the American with influences of the Hispanic, and working with all these chilies and all that. So that was just such an amazing and totally change of experience for me, and I learned so much. But I'm telling you, the hardest part to get in a kitchen in Phoenix, or I'm going to say, you know, especially in Arizona, is you really have to earn your stars, because now you're working under a lot of Hispanic chefs, right? So, but it's no difference. But they always call me a gringo, you know, hey gringo, and they whistle on you. But once you show them that you are dedicated and a hard worker, you know, then you become a family really, really quick. So I spent time in Phoenix, loved it, and I moved to LA. And I spent 3 years in LA working for a French chef called Guy Gabriel. He owns Love and Salt, if you heard about. It's a famous restaurant down in Manhattan Beach. And with his help, you know, because I've been doing a lot of cooking, but just to go from a really hardcore traditional trained chef teaching me, you know, traditional techniques, because sometimes you can do a lot of things in the kitchen, but you lose that traditional things, my opinion. You know, all depends what you're doing. But I spent, you know, my time with him, and I learned so much. But it was moments that I was taking a break. It was so intense that I passed out in the car, because he was so hard, you know. So you wake up, you know, the restaurant is up and running, and you're 2 hours late because you passed out in the car. You know, but it's such a learning experience, and he's my biggest mentor today too. You know, he's 86 years old, and we talk weekly, and he's fantastic, and he really gives insight of, you know, to run businesses, because he owns 3 restaurants. So when I opened Play in San Francisco, I opened it in a theater district, so I did a play with words, how you say play in Swedish. Right. But this is just because I was working up in Tahoe, and as an executive chef, in a members club. And one of the members, he asked me, it's like, hey, do you want to do Christmas table in San Francisco? And I was like, yeah, okay, I can do it. You know, thinking about, it's 25 people, a traditional Christmas table. And if you had that, there's a lot of dishes to make there. No, it's going to be 250 people. And I was like, oh shit, how am I going to pull this off? But you know, with magic, you know, when you have your organized, you get to make it, you know, a prep stuff up in Tahoe, drove all the way to San Francisco, I got the team with me, we put this, Christmas table together, and it was such a success that the day after I got a phone call from a Norwegian guy named Trond. I don't know if anybody know Trond. He moved back to Norway, by the way. But he was a manager of 3 hotels in San Francisco. And he's like, hey, Robert, I have a space for you here in San Francisco. I want you to come and look at it. All right, come in, I was still working and lived up in Tao. Coming down, meeting him in an old hotel, old restaurant. He's like, hey, I will give you this place. Only reason you open a Scandinavian restaurant. I was like, that's a big step. But I've always been I never planned to be a restaurateur, But when it fell into your lap, it's like, I cannot miss this opportunity. So I spoke to my wife, and I was like, should we do this or no? Okay, let's do it. So I went down. I stayed in the hotel for 2 months. Renovated, me and my friends renovated the whole restaurant. Hired a staff, get the menu, and we opened in 6 weeks. Wow. That's just insane. But sometimes it's so good to do instead of thinking. When you overthink, you can install things. But when you're on a mission and make things happen, it's amazing what you can do. And I remember a lot of restaurateurs in San Francisco were so upset on me because who opens a restaurant without telling anybody? And who opens a Swedish restaurant and not telling anybody? And that's what that new Nordic food, became really big, and Noma was just a hot, everything was booming. And I never planned it to be that timing, but the timing was that people made an interest of Nordic food, So I couldn't ask for a better timing. So we just opened it, not telling anybody, and I had that restaurant for 10 years. It was fantastic. It was great memories. But I gave that up was it 2 years ago, or almost three years ago. I couldn't do it anymore. So I also opened a restaurant in Petaluma. So running 2 restaurants at the same time is easy on a piece of paper, but actually doing it is just much harder, And you can have your chefs and all that, but you always have to oversee it. And sometimes I got so confused which restaurant was restaurant because, menus, so it was very overwhelming. So even when I was sad to be taking a step and give it away or, took it out of my hands, it changed my life too, because that running 2 restaurants was a big divorce. It was a divorce for me. So I divorced my wife. She left me. So it was a hard time, to go through, personal and professional. But just for me to focus on the restaurant in Petaluma and start to take it one step back, I have 4 kids too, and I feel like I need to take back the time I've been missing with my kids. So just focusing on myself, the restaurant, spending quality time with my kids, have my kids start working in the restaurant so they know what's dad doing every day, and it's just been such a joy to have my kids working in the restaurant. So just to take a step back, 2 years later, me and my wife get back together. So it was a dream come true for me. So it's been amazing, and it's been fun, to take a step back when you're in it and take a step back, and now you start to delegate instead. It's such a relief, to see your operation still working without you overseeing it 24 hours a day, And I'm getting more creative. I do a lot of catering, private chefing, and I can focus on the menu because I do a lot of. I never thought I was going to be a vegan chef. it's just ended up in my lap because I've been getting so many requests of vegan food, and then when I start to experiment with it, the more fun I had to work with plant-based ingredients, and it's like, oh my God, you can do this and this and this. For me to introduce like Scandinavian food with California, it's like I remember my chef down in Los Angeles. He said, "Well, because I said, what is really California cuisine?" And he said one thing, you follow the seasons really hard, and you take the freshest protein, fish, or any meat, or anything that's in seasonal, and it's the best quality. And you have to be simple, but you bring out the best flavors of both, the vegetables or anything and the protein. And then you put your twist on it. So, and that changed my thing of, food doesn't have to be so complicated, and it's beautiful to be creative, but you can be creative in smaller ways, But I used to have something that's really a small thing of this fresh produce, anything you picked from the garden, and it's good quality of a protein, or it doesn't have to be protein, can be anything else. But used to the combination of the quality speaks, this is California cuisine. So that made me change, how I'm cooking today. I was like, okay, it doesn't have to be complete, but it's just bring out the best flavor. But when I had so many requests when it comes to vegan food that I'm just starting to be like, oh my God, this is so much fun, and I'm using old techniques, put different techniques, but to use different things, a lot of grains and the produce, and it just comes out absolutely these fun and amazing flavors. So that's been a very good success for me when it comes to food. So when I opened the restaurant Stockholm, so I'm born and raised in Stockholm, so the name is just home from home, right? So every year I'm flying back to Stockholm, and I was like, oh, I can have my tunnbrödsrulle, or my Swedish pizza, or the Swedish kebab place. It sounds silly, but you get it, right? You get it. You get it. So what can I do? Even when you open a restaurant, is you have to create a concept, and you can open an Italian, or you can open, but it needs to be a concept, right? It needs to. And when I wrote this menu for Stockholm, people, had the other chefs look up and say, I don't understand half of this menu. You're all over the place. But when you have people from Sweden, they're like, they're like, I get it, And it's fun because Sweden or Northern Europe, after all, we're so heavily influential with the Hmong culture of people from different countries. Like in the early 70s, we opened I think we're the late 60s or early 70s. That's when the immigration, we really heavily from Chile, Iran, all cultures come to Sweden and change what Swedish food is really today. What's going on today, and it's really fun to see. Because when you grow up with it, it's a part of your culture. So now this adoption is Swedish, but every country has its own thing. I think Norway, Denmark, they have their own thing. So Germany, especially Germany, they have their own thing too when it comes to Hmong culture, food, because every country they're doing a twist on it, and that's beautiful. So I brought, what is a Swedish kebab plate? But it's fun. It's been very, very successful, and we get the Bib Gourmand. I've been getting it 4 times now. This shows, I work close with the farmers. The farmers comes and knock on the door, and I'm talking to them daily. Our local wineries. I'm really focusing on what's local in Petaluma. when it comes to our beer selection, the wine selection, and our produce too, And I always, it always feels good to have something special like that, because you're so close to it that you can feel it, And the Petaluma is just a wonderful place to be. So that's a little bit of my trip. I think that's it.
Thank you, Robert. And Nicole, are we? Yeah, okay. I really felt bad once I realized what we were demanding of Nicole today, which was to do both coffee breaks, lunch, and the presentation. So she's been gathering her thoughts a little bit here, but let me introduce her. Nicole Achitola is a chef who's been working in fine dining in Boston for nearly a decade in the past, has moved to Copenhagen, Denmark. She married a Dane. She started a family, worked as a chef in a variety of capacities in Copenhagen, just as Nordic cuisine was emerging as one of the forefronts on the global culinary scene. When Nicole and her family moved to San Francisco, she started baking Danish rye bread to sell at farmers markets, and the success of that venture inspired her to open a casual and modern Scandinavian restaurant in San Francisco. 7 years later, Cantina, as it's called, or Canteen, I think as we say here, is a thriving business known as the place to go for irresistible Scandinavian foods made from scratch, including pastries, wholesome breads, open-faced sandwiches, brunch dishes, and comforting meals. Okay, so I have one more thing to show before I introduce her.
Yeah. Signed copy.
That is going to be followed up next year with a savory cookbook as well. So Nicole's experience is interesting because she's also not only done the restaurant presentation, but also the publishing presentation of Scandinavian to an English-speaking audience. The subtitle of the book is A Love Letter to the Baking of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. Okay, so we're going to hear a little bit about what it means to launch a sort of Nordic hipster market street San Francisco cafe, and what her experience has been in presenting this to the Nordic, to the Bay Area public. So join me in welcoming Nicole.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? I might walk around a little bit just to keep my feet busy. Yeah. No, it was not painful to have to do lunch right up in, but we're ready. We'll be ready. I'd love to tell you a little bit about my journey, opening Canteen, and prior to that. I started off, I'm originally from the United States. A lot of people come into Canteen and say, oh, so you're from Denmark? I'm like, no, I've lived in Denmark. I lived there for 15 years, but I'm originally from Ohio. And while I was in Ohio, I came to meet a girl who was attending my high school, who was an exchange student. She was there for a year, and she was from Denmark. It was a place I didn't even know where it was. I thought it was close to maybe Amsterdam. I was kind of not super sharp on my geography, and over the course of that year, I not only learned where Denmark was and a lot about their culture from her stories, but also we bonded and became best friends. So When she left and retreated back to Denmark, we were sure that we'd be seeing each other again. And so we had many visits back and forth. And one time I ended up staying, the very first time I was there, I came for 3 months and stayed. And it was over the summer when there's like endless daylight and we were biking everywhere and just having a good old time. I think I was 19 at the time and just had the time of our lives. I've never experienced anything like that in Ohio. So it was just a wonderful time to be alive and be there and experience her country with her now that she'd been and experiencing with mine. And so we would go back and forth to each other's country, visiting each other. And this was, with, air mail envelopes and writing mails, and then once AOL started doing a little emailing. So this is back in the day. But we kept our friendship strong. And one time I went to go visit her. She was living in an apartment with 3 other people, and one of which is now the guy I've been married to for 25 years. So it ended up being that eventually, so like I said, I grew up in Ohio, went to New York for culinary school, finished there, and moved to Boston because I wanted to continue my studies to get a bachelor's degree in hotel and restaurant management, seeing that for sure I was in love with the whole idea of being in the food service industry. And I was there and I started working, as soon as I finished at Boston University, then I went and started working in kitchens. And it was always my dream to be working in gourmet restaurants and, upscale and fine dining. And it was a dream come true as I started working my way up through the hierarchy that is, or it is still there, but that exists in kitchens. And was fortunate enough to have some great experiences. As Robert also mentioned, it is a school of hard knocks in a lot of ways. It can be difficult, especially for a female, to be in an environment like that. Often I was the only female in a kitchen, but I kind of liked it. I liked the idea that I was doing something that would maybe pave the way for other females and that I could do it just as well as a man could do it. I opened up a restaurant with a chef. Her name is Barbara Lynch. Some of you may be familiar with her. She's actually had come under a lot of critique here the last few years just because of her way of managing people and some of the practices that she's done. And though I was not at the receiving end of some of the way that she was, I saw that some dysfunctionality was for sure going on. While I was working with her, I was working extremely long hours. I would basically go to bed at night, very late at night, wake up, go straight to work. I had no life. I was doing this 6 days a week. On the 7th day, I would just kind of lay in my bed all day long, just trying to recuperate. That was the reality. And I think looking back on it now, I think it was a matter of maybe I would have wished that I would have been able to establish some boundaries, but for me, it was just like so exciting to be a part of this and have an opportunity to be working with such an accomplished chef because she is very talented in other ways. So feeling as though my life was kind of out of balance and off kilter, I decided to go visit my old friend in Denmark and that I would take a break. Now, as a chef, it's quite good because you have an opportunity to travel quite a bit. That was one of the selling points before I went to culinary school. I loved the idea of, well, then I could be a chef here and I could be a chef here and I'd see the world because I love to travel. And then when it came to it, then I really actually wanted to be going to France or Italy because those were like the big worldly kitchens, and they are very widespread and popular to this day. And that was what a lot of chefs were doing too. They were going to those 2 countries especially, and some a little bit later on going to Spain as well. But I had this inn in Denmark, and at the time, we're talking about 1999, there was nothing really there was nothing that was talking about new Nordic cuisine, Nordic diet. To be honest, when I moved there, I had the impressions that it was almost like what I would say would be like a traditional British food, kind of like roast meat, vegetables, brown sauce, kind of quite very homey. But I felt like it was definitely time for a rehaul. And thankfully, that came a handful of years after, where forefront people such as René Redzepi, Klaus Meyer in Denmark, plus in other countries as well, Norway and Sweden, they really paved the way for new Nordic diet and new Nordic cuisine to come become something. Sorry, sometimes I have to just. This is why I took this class, is because I've had this itch in my throat. Sometimes it goes away, and so it was a lucky time to be in Denmark and to to go and be kind of like, oh well, I'd rather be in Italy or France, but I'm going to Denmark, and then to have this emerge out of nowhere really was like such a lucky strike for me, being in the culinary world. And so I definitely transitioned and tried to learn previously. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Previously, I had been working in the upscale restaurants I've been working in had been Italian, so I had to also learn a lot about not only the traditional dishes, but also the the way that the cuisine was changing and the approach to it. So I am so thankful that I was there to experience that, and I continued working in restaurants a bit, but because also I was starting a family, and that was a completely different way of working in restaurants. Once I started working over there, because I wasn't going for Michelin star restaurants, I was going for something that was going to be a little bit more conducive and give me that balance that I was seeking. And then for the last number of years, so I had my children, and I have been working with public food for a while, which means I was working in an organization. It's called Københavns Madhus, but it was known for it's a Copenhagen House of Food, where it was an organization that was supported, subsidized by the government, and we would basically ensure or try to improve the quality of food in all meals being served in the public sector. So it would be hospitals, jails, schools, preschools, nursing homes, everything. It was such a meaningful job. So my main job there was to teach classes. I would do culinary classes where we'd have a group of people. It could be like a group of preschoolers coming in. We talk about nutrition. We talked about strategies for getting kids to eat food and eat healthier. And then we'd also talk about strategies in the kitchen. How can we get you to move away from getting bake-off bread to actually being able to maybe stir together a dough the day before that you just have to throw in the oven the day after, and you have fresh baked bread that's so much better for you, and you know what it's made from. So I did that for a number of years, and then at one point we had something happen in our family, a shift, which was that both of my husband's parents passed away within a short period of time between each other. And those big life events, they really can have an effect on you. And so we decided life is strange right now. Plus, strangely enough, lots of our friends were getting divorced. So we're like, what's going on? Everybody's been we've been all together and happy and everything. And now we've got both death and divorce and everything. And it was just like, maybe we should take 6 months, head somewhere that's wonderful, bond with our kids. Now we have 3 kids. They could go to school. They could be better at English. We could try and live in America for 6 months. So 3 months into it, we did that, said, we'll be back in 6 months. And people said, oh, you're not coming back? Are you crazy? But I have family in Napa, so we figured San Francisco was a good spot to be, plus with the weather and the nature and all the wonderful things that are here in the Bay Area. So we came with our kids. We stayed for about 3 months into it. We thought, oh gosh, this is going really well. Kids are thriving. We're having a great time. Yes, of course, we miss our friends and family, but we want to be able to extend this if we can. And then we said, so, at this point, we hadn't been working. I'd been baking bread and doing the farmer's market and that kind of thing, and that's been going really well. And then we started talking about big dreams. Well, I wanted to get back to restaurants. I love teaching, but I also wanted to open them. And then I don't know what happened. Maybe one glass of wine too many or something. But then we were like, okay, we're going to open up a restaurant. Yeah, I don't know how that happened because that was a big step. But we opened in 2018, and we've been open ever since. We're coming up on our 8th anniversary now. And it has been a roller coaster, especially during pandemic time, as you can imagine, being a business owner. But overall, I think it's just been such a meaningful experience for me, and to have gone from the beginning, where we had classified ourselves, or we call ourselves a Scandinavian eatery, just because it's because I have a lot of experience from Denmark, but I also have had a period of time where we had a summer house in Sweden. So there's lots of things that I bonded to in Sweden, and visiting friends in Norway and everything. And I thought, why limit ourselves to just one country? I'd love to be able to dabble. And sometimes we even bring in things from Finland or Iceland or things like that. So it's been crazy because in the beginning, people didn't really know what to expect. They didn't know what Scandinavian was, and I feel like a lot of that has actually gotten a lot easier since then. Open-faced sandwiches, like just to take an example, or you know what? Maybe I should do some slides and I can show you. Let's see if I can get this to go. Okay, so one of the pillars of the restaurant is our porridges. We have a sweet and a savory porridge every day, and sometimes we do specials of them. This one in particular is with cara oranges, sea buckthorn, which is the little orange berries there, and then this is like we made skyr, the Icelandic. So like I said, we dabble in sometimes into the other Nordic countries. And we have a tarragon mint sugar here, and it's like a basic creamy 3-grain porridge, which a lot of people really enjoy because it's kind of similar to oatmeal, but it's multiple grains. So we usually try and make the sweet one where it's gluten-free. So we have buckwheat or millet in there, as well as oat berries or oat groats and old-fashioned oat flakes. Nice and creamy. And this one was kind of an easy sell. People knew what that was about. This one was a little bit more difficult. This is our savory porridge. This is with mushrooms, farmer's cheese, turmeric. It had some sunflower seeds on it. The farmer's cheese we make in-house. This was a little bit, it also has kale in it mixed in. Also, again, 3 grains. We're trying to incorporate some of the artisanal grains that are really so satisfying, so comforting. When we first put savory porridge on, people were like, what is that about? I know what porridge is. It can also be confusing because in England, porridge is sweet. It's like an oatmeal. So it's like also what we associate it to mean, whereas in Denmark or in Scandinavia, it's one term that is both savory and sweet. So this has become one of our top sellers, to be honest. People love it. It is for sure the first, my favorite dish on the menu, the standing menu. We've tried to do it with different toppings. People always go back to the mushroom. When are you going to get the mushroom back on? We've tried to do it with roast squash. So we do like a mushroom medley of different mushrooms. And funny enough, this is a recipe that a lot of people ask for. People were expecting it to be in Scandinavian from Scratch, the first cookbook, but because it's not baking, I couldn't really put it in there. So it's for sure in the book number 2. This is another sweet porridge. Just an example of we try, and we're definitely influenced by the California produce. We follow the seasons. The seasons are slightly different in some ways, and thankfully longer just because of the beautiful sunlight. And the temperature, that seasons are longer, but we try and stay abreast of what's in right now, and try and really break anything that go away from. Sorry, I just want to see my time here. Try and go away from anything that's I had my head baker started experimenting with apples about 3 or 4 months ago, and I said, "This is not apple season." Great, you're thinking ahead, but we need to put that on pause and come back to it, revisit it when it's time. Aside from the porridges, we also do open-faced sandwiches. which we've also seen a learning curve with as well. We really have to be quite explicit on the menu in terms of what an open-faced sandwich is. We say one piece of bread, or on a slice of sprouted rye bread. Just because people can kind of be, if you call it a sandwich, then they're thinking, oh, it's something I can eat. And a lot of people have the idea that when they get a sandwich, they're going to have one sandwich and they're going to be full. It's a full meal. So there's also some kind of communication that we need to have in place, especially for our front of house staff, that they're able to say, okay, you're getting the potato and herring open-faced sandwich for lunch. If you're very hungry, I'd suggest getting a pastry or a side salad or something like that just to supplement it, because it is one piece of bread. We don't want to change the proportions just to make sure that, like, we don't want to do a huge piece of bread to help people get more full, so we want to keep it authentic. So it's a balance of also being true to what we believe is, or what we want, or our interpretation of what we want to bring, and what we want is it to be close to what is traditional. We think that the best bread is the one that's sliced thinner, as you'll see on our lunch table. This is another open-faced sandwich. This one is made with some meatballs, and it has a mustard relish on top, and then we have our home pickles and carrot ribbons. They're both pickled. This is kind of where we're going a little bit. This would not be classified as a traditional, but it's, meatballs. These meatballs we do a little bit different. We're trying to also give a modern twist to some of the food. So this is made with meatballs where half of the meat has been, or it's half meat, half vegetables. So we're just trying to do it. We're not we're not shaming anybody that wants to eat meat, but we try and do it in a more healthful way. And people really like that they can recognize what it is. They recognize that it's meatballs. They have the illusion that it's meatballs, but and it doesn't really, we haven't changed it so much that it doesn't taste like meat, or that it doesn't taste like meatballs. So it's finding that balance between doing something that feels authentic, but also where it's the way that we interpret it, or the way that what we want to bring and promote in the way that we reproduce it. A lot of our, you're not going to find a lot of meat on the menu in general at Canteen. I don't eat a ton of meat myself. I love fish. I love vegetables. When the season's right, I think that this is, the best way to do it is to put it straight, make an ode to cauliflower Romanesco on an open-faced sandwich. This is we did a whole section on open-faced sandwiches because we were baking the bread in the cookbook. So this is just an example of that with a tarragon cream underneath, and some almonds as well. And yep. And then we breach into like a part where we're trying to do something that's familiar, changing it a little bit. So this is where we take the sprouted rye bread, the same exact dough, and we make a bun out of it. And then we fill it with some things. One thing that can be difficult with an open-faced sandwich, we were finding, is that a lot of people like to grab and go, as Americans do. They've got an hour. They need to, for lunch, they need to get in and get out. They don't have time to sit down and use a fork and knife to eat their open-faced sandwich. So we're like, well, how do we do that and still get some of the flavors make it be a little bit more satiating, a little bit more filling. So instead of cutting our bread thinner, we decided to just create something else, which was these rye bun sandwiches that we have 2 daily, and they are wildly popular just because it's like an easy thing, easy to take with you on the run, easy to be ordered online in advance and picked up. And this one in particular is with cured trout. And I'll explain that in a second. Some shaved fennel, pickled red onion, dill, and then we make a potato crema, which is almost like a finer potato salad, I guess you'd call it. It's chilled. It's like a condiment on the bottom that really has a little lemon in it, a little bit of tartness, which is really nice with the trout. And trout, again, is an example. A lot of people would say, oh, that's salmon. We're trying to be a little bit responsible. We're trying to be as responsible as we can. It can be difficult to make the right choices because people that come into a Scandinavian restaurant are often looking for salmon. They don't really care. They leave it up to us to find out what can be sourced, what's sourced responsibly, and we take that very we take that issue heavily. So we are serving trout most of the I mean year round, excuse me. But and when salmon's in season, we add it to the menu as well. Wild salmon is the only way. We're not going with farmed. This trout in particular is farmed, but it comes from a purveyor called 2x It's up in it's called McFarland Springs Trout. It's an excellent product. It is farmed. It's fed with red algae. It's a very sustainable product. If these fish get out into wildlife, they do not create any kind of disease. They're not diseased in their own. So we stand by this product, and we've been using it since day one, and we think that it does a great job of creating something that's similar to salmon and can be available year-round. This is just like a little dish for people that want to feel, the comfort. That's also part of it. We find that a lot of the customers that come into Canteen, I'd say there is a little bit of a shift between the customers that we see during the week. Those are more like regulars, people we know by their first name. Weekend, it's definitely a brunch destination. So we definitely see like people who are unfamiliar with the food or have more questions. They're just a little bit more in doubt in general. So I think that there's definitely and I would say, we do basically double up on both numbers. In the weekend, it's busy from the moment we open. There's often a line down the sidewalk, and then we double up on staff as well. We have a very full kitchen. We're making as much as we can from scratch. We have about 6 people out front just helping with pastries and just keeping the flow going. So it's definitely a machine in the weekend. We find that there are 3 basic customers that we have. One of them is people who are direct descendants or have some sort of, let's say they have a Danish mom or a Swedish dad or something like that. It can also be some like the ones that are on the borderline of maybe a German, there's German descent or there's, the area like European in general, but I would say definitely Northern European, where some of the bread types are still reminiscent of something that you'd find in Germany, for example. And those are the people that are looking primarily for comfort. And then the third group would be the people who have traveled in the area and they're seeing, they want to eat that way again. They are fond of that, have experienced the food culture and really just want to emulate that as well. So we always try and find like a little bit of comfort in what we do as well. This is one of our favorite things that we like to do. We do it especially around Easter time. Smorgastorta. It's a Swedish dish that's made. It looks like a cake from the outside, aside from the egg on top. But we layer it up. We bake bread in a round, almost like in a cake pan, and then we slice it into 3 layers, and we garnish it ornately. We've got different kinds of salads in the middle. You don't always have to do it with fish. You can also do a vegetarian version. There's lots of room for, making your own version, but this one's with smoked trout salad, and then we have a shrimp salad, and then we put our cured trout on the outside and garnished it with egg and everything. We sold it as a bundle where somebody can get a whole cake for Christmas or for Easter time, which is really nice. And it's it may look a little funny, but it's actually it's also very tasty, surprisingly. And it's also in the next cookbook. So it's also a balance of traditionally smorgastorta would be something where they would have almost like a liver pate in it. They could have roast meat. You would have this thing called, I don't know what it's called. It's almost like a jelly, sweet, like a jello that you put in it as well. And so this is like our updated, this is like, really great vegetables, excellent fish, that's kind of thing. And it really makes a difference. It's an enjoyable thing to taste. And then we have some things that we don't change at all. This is, you guys had the tea burgers earlier. This is just, one of those things where we're like, it doesn't need any updating. This is like, if you're looking for a tea burgers, we're going to give you exactly what you're looking for. We don't change that at all. And then every once in a while, we have a little bit of fun with, because we're only open in the daytime hours, that was something that I really wanted to make happen when I'm having my own place instead of doing nighttime hours and having it be kind of like opposite what my family was doing. We do every once in a while do pop-ups in the evening where we choose a theme. And sometimes we do a Scandinavian, it could be either Swedish or Danish, or we can do a mix of, or just call it, we usually, to begin with, we were only doing Danish hot dogs. And then this time we did a Swedish hot dog where we had, everything's made from scratch. We make our own shrimp salad, we make our own bread. Okay, we didn't actually make the hot dogs there, but, and it's really fun for people. We also get a different crowd in the evening, people that are normally at work or maybe, are not at home in this residential area where we are, because we are in the upper end of Market Street. It's really nice to see some new faces and people that are able to come, whereas because we close at 2, they're maybe not possible. This is also a big seller on our menu. It's called the Kålbirke sandwich. It is, Kålbirke is a real thing in Denmark. It's not always shaped like this. It's a little bit flatter, almost like the tea burgers. One of our sous chefs, when we first started, she was saying, I really think people need more eggs. We had eggs on the menu, but she thought, we really need like some more scrambled eggs. And so we offered it as a side, and then we saw people kind of slicing open their Kålbirkes and putting it in, and we're like, okay, maybe we should maybe we should do that for them. And then we made it an option to put on ham, bacon, or cheese, or some people do all 3. And it's, I was a little conflicted in the beginning because I was like, oh, this is not a real thing, and I don't know if we're just like, this is just a joke. I've gotten into it now, and I've eaten my fair share, and I think it's just wonderful, and it's a good mix between being here in San Francisco and the American culture, and then bringing it also in some Scandinavian part of it. So I think it's been such a pleasure to be able to. Living in Denmark, when I first moved there, I was thinking, well, I'll stay for a little while and we'll see how it goes. And to be able to land a place and now to, coming back to the United States and to come back and actually miss it and feel like it's really is a part of you, I had not expected that. And it's such it can be a difficult thing sometimes to experience, to become so close to 2 cultures. But it's also very enriching, and I'm forever grateful for that. So, Mark, you mentioned the love letter. It really was. You don't realize until, I didn't realize until I was gone and had moved over here that I was like, I'm really missing this bread. I'm really missing these. I'm sure you miss people and friends and family, but you're also missing some of the rituals that you have around the table. And it's just been wonderful. So, thank you.
Thank you so much to both of you. I would love to start things off by asking a pretty basic question. Having grown up in Minnesota and being familiar with strongly heritage-oriented parts of the United States, like Wisconsin, Tom's hometown in Madison, Minneapolis, St. Paul, or Seattle, where they still have Scandinavian suburbs and things like that. I would imagine that opening a restaurant that had a Scandinavian profile would meet very clear expectations about what that food would have to be, and lots of authenticity police who are sort of going around saying, well, that's not a real one of those. So I'm curious whether you've felt more freedom working here, where the concept, you can kind of paint on it more what you want, because people aren't we don't have that kind of really sort of strong heritage community here. So I'd be interested in what you both have to say about that.
Did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, the traditional police is there daily. Yeah. Yeah, it's real. I think, it's very important you put your own twist on things. And you have to show your own personality with the food. And I think you can do, if you go back to traditional, the real traditional, in my head is, when it comes to Swedish, especially Swedish food, I don't know, Danish food, it's pretty boring, And I used to take that traditional and make it your own. It's still the same concept, but make sure everything is done in your own way. I think that's very important when you do traditional food. And I think there's a lot of chefs do that. They put their own twist on it. But otherwise, the police is there all the time.
Oh, for sure, yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned the Midwest and where there's a large Scandinavian communities. I'd never been to Minnesota. We went there for the book tour and found out that some of the things that they were asking about, or like, oh, is this so-and-so recipe in here? I found out that's not even a thing in Scandinavia. It's also sometimes it gets distorted of like, oh, there's this bread called cardamom bread that is baked in and I was like, I never heard of that. And all my research of like, that sounds new to me. And I found out, oh, well, it actually originated in the United States, But I feel, sometimes I get messages, from people who are like, you can't do that. That's not the way they normally do. And it's like, oh, for real? Like, as if there's one way to do something. I mean, even within, everybody has the right to change it. It's like, if you don't like it, then don't do it. Somebody told me one time, actually for our hot dog pop-up, you can never put ketchup underneath the crispy onions. It was like, what? Okay, I would think, you would want it to be crispy, so you don't put anything on top of it, so you keep it crispy. I was like, okay, get a life. No, no, sorry. Yeah.
But I also like the whole Minnesota thing. Because that's their own culture. I mean, they can create their own cookbooks that has nothing really connected to. They made their own cuisine, and they still call it Nordic cuisine, right? But it's still connected in some way. But I think Minnesota is the biggest consumer of lutefisk in the and lutefisk is kind of dying in Sweden. I never see it on a Christmas table anymore. But here in the States, people still ask it. I get people calling around Christmas time. They like, please tell me lutefisk is here. I was like, I think that's a dead dish, right? But it's funny how I think everybody's creating their own traditions and so on.
Yeah.
Okay, questions from the audience, Mr. Nordic, if you would.
The runner.
John,
Do you have this? Thank you. And if you'd kindly say who you are, where you come from.
Hello, I'm Chandani. I formerly worked at Berkeley. I'm now a student at UCLA in Los Angeles. And my question was just a spin-off of the last thought that Robert said. I feel as though cuisine, especially within diaspora, so migrants from their home country into places like the United States, Asia, all over the place, tend to preserve the image of that cuisine from that time and build that and develop from there. And that looks very different to how the cuisine from the home is developing alongside. And then you have this question of which image do you mirror? So how do you consider that when you're developing a menu or a restaurant and a concept?
Well, I think the concept is that you really have to show your own personality in the food. I think that's the most important thing. Yeah. And Paul, well, you said it. I think you said it last night. I don't know if you remember. No, but yeah, what I'm trying to say is you can create a menu with things like say, oh, this is going to sell, right? But is this really the concept you want to do? Say, oh, I know. I mean, everybody knows if you put a halibut on the menu, you know it's going to sell. You know, it doesn't matter. You know, that's, you know, so, you know, some dishes are is winners. But it's very important you have to make it, you have to speak this, you know, that you're standing behind it. This, you know, you make it your own. And then you have to figure out, because it's really funny with restaurants too, and you must be noticed too, you can open a restaurant with a concept, but the people that walks into that restaurant can also change it. You know, it's like, oh, maybe this concept of the restaurant was not used for this area, but you have to also adapt to it. How can I still have my identity, but still catering to the you know, the community that comes into the restaurant? So, you know, I have to think in different ways, you know. It's interesting, right?
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
you have to teach,
Yeah.
you know, you have to teach your customers too.
Yeah, because otherwise you're veering off on a path where it doesn't seem authentic to you, you know, because you're bending yourself over backwards. And that's why I think you have to take some distance at some point and say, this is what I believe to be true. This is what I want to bring to the table. It's okay. You can have your opinions about, you know, that I'm messing with something traditional, but so be it. That's just the way that it is, you know. I'm not trying to mess up or mess with history or anything like that. It's like food culture, food is meant to change and evolve through time, and that's just the way that it is.
Yeah.
Hi, I am Jonathan Lehr from Örebro University in Sweden, but I'm a Dane also, so I don't put shrimps on my hot dogs. Just to make that clear. No, thank you so much. This was really very inspiring talk, and I think this question that Mark also brought up with authenticity and negotiating and what you just said about clients, and I think it's super interesting. I had a specific question for you, Nicole, about the porridges, because I'm currently also working on Danish porridge, hipster porridge company called grød, a very Danish word, yeah, which means porridge. Grød. And what is funny about that is that porridge has been seen really as this kind of a food that's been looked very much down upon, although it's maybe the most important food in Danish food culture, what most people eat for the last 100 years every day. But it was, for instance, also a food of trauma, I think, for certain generations. My parents' generations, the baby boomers came up, and maybe the generation before, was served porridge very often as a kind of filler, as a kind of, because it was not money enough. And for instance, my father-in-law, he hated porridge. And he was born in 95, and then he had porridge all his childhood, and his kind of symbol of becoming a successful man was that he got a good job and he could offer himself to have meat every day. It's a very traditional Danish approach to food. So really seeing this, whereas porridge, and I think for that generation, really seen as something you give to children, to the poor, elderly, all these groups, but it's not seen as a super sexy food. But I think it's super interesting. Also, one of my papers is called "Making Porridge Sexy," about also what you did very beautiful with all the toppings. And so I think. But I was wondering, how is it perceived here? Is it a little bit the same? Is it different? Do you? Yeah.
So, first of all, I wish that there was a second word that I could use instead of porridge because of those, that's easy. Yeah, but I think the word porridge for a lot of people is difficult because they think about something that's like the consistency of like wallpaper paste, you know, where it's just like this thick. And I know even from my Danish husband that, you know, that was something they ate before, what they would do it for holidays if they were going to have a nice meal with meat and so forth. To make that meal and that meat last a little bit longer, they'd actually start with eating porridge before to kind of settle your appetite, you know, fill up your stomach halfway, and then you would get into the real meal. I did, when I was playing with the idea after I'd done farmers markets, when I was playing with the idea of opening up a place, we did some porridge pop-ups at different locations. At that time, it was there was a company where you could just basically book a restaurant that was empty for the night, and you could go in and do. So I would do some daytime pop-ups where I would do porridge themed pop-ups, and it was really interesting. I feel like I learned a lot. There's always kind of this give and take of like, okay, I'm going to take that feedback, but I'm going to let that be there. I remember at one of the pop-ups we had an elderly woman that came in. It didn't have any reference. She'd had no connections to. I think she was looking for like basically oatmeal. And when she came in and got her food, she sent back the porridge and said, I'm not going to eat that because all of my toppings are cold. And it was like, it was a hot porridge and we had like fresh fruit on top, cut and everything like that. And it was like, that's actually the intention, just because, you know, you're used to eating, you know, so I think that it can be, we experiment, and like I said, there's, people find what really makes sense to them, like the mushrooms on the savory, that for a lot of people, and then you change it just a little bit, and it's like, no, they don't want to have roast squash on their porridge, they'd rather do something else. So I am a huge advocate and fan of porridge. I competed years ago in Copenhagen in a porridge master competition where I came in second place. Coming from this public, where we were doing public meals, that is one thing that we emphasized with the group that was taking care of children, preschoolers and so forth. There needs to be porridge on the menu one day a week. It's both economical, it's delicious, it fills people up, it's comforting. There's just so many things going for it. And that's why I've advocated to have it. It's on the front cover of my next book. People might think that it's like, what is that? I don't understand what it is, and I'm sure we'll get plenty of that from you. But the first pitch for what should be on the front cover was, believe it or not, Swedish meatballs. And I said, we're not doing meatballs. That's way too, we need to change the narrative here. We need to do something different. So the meatballs are on the back now, and the porridge is on the front because, we've got to change this a bit. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for sharing. My name is Nigel, and I'm a full-time second-year MBA student here. So I have a question about, so I'm just curious, like, is there any time you met any, like, conflict between your concept or your menu, like, and also your profitability? Like, in such scenarios, how do you really, did you ever make any sacrifice, or how do you balance like profitability and your concept of the restaurant? Thank you.
Do you want to say something? I have something to say, but you can go first if you like.
Well, what we used to sacrifice, because I didn't understand the questions really, but sacrifice your work or profitability?
It's kind of like, how do you adjust or adapt to the situations, like when you are going to scale or expand into a new market, but you find like your concept maybe is, I don't know, like for example, like you are facing some pressure from the profitability, and how do you adjust, and do you need to, like for example, to introduce a new takeaway business or something, such kind of things, or you need to sacrifice some of the components of their food materials like you really into, but for consideration.
You have to reinvent. For me, I don't know how other people, but you have to reinvent the wheel every day. You know, I mean, how can we make it better, right? So, if I understand the question right? It's for me, you know, you always have to move forward. You know, whatever it is. So you always have to come, you know, how can we make things better? How can we market it better? You know, it's reaching out in different ways. And I think with restaurants today, with all the technology that's going on, it's a whole, it's night and day what it was like 10 years ago. I mean, everything is social media, you know, it's so much social media. And I think it's fantastic. But I feel like, you know, because now I have all my young people is doing it for me because I can't keep up. You know? Yeah. So I don't understand the question correctly, but hopefully you had some kind of answer.
Yeah. I think from a profitability standpoint, it was important for me that opening Canteen, that I wanted to have something that was casual. I already mentioned daytime, but it was, for me, it was important for me. It was not important to me that I get waited on with the same level of service that I did at fine dining when I worked in that. For me, I found more. I find it much more rewarding for me to use some of my income on buying great ingredients and let them speak for themselves, and don't try and mask them, that you're really being true to the ingredients, and have smaller staff out front. So at Canteen, you order at the counter, you sit down, and you're served your food from there. That was like a conscious decision that I really wanted to focus on, being able to buy 100% organic produce. And we still do that to this day. A lot of people kind of shake their head and say, you could make a lot more money if you just went over to conventional. But it's like, for me, that's like a no-go. We're not doing that. There are, with menu items, there's always some winners and losers. For us, the porridge, as I was saying, not only is it my favorite dish, and it's really popular, but it also, from a money standpoint, is some good profitability on there. We don't serve a lot of meat. Sustainable meat is very expensive, even at a wholesale price. So we play that down. And whatever we do with meat, it is meant as it's not a central thing. I talked about the meatballs that have more vegetables, but we do our home smoked bacon that we cure and smoke and things like that. It's a long process, but otherwise we try and steer clear of the things that are really just expensive for us, and try and stay green and stay clear of those things that are too expensive.
Appreciate the MBA asking the profitability question. Actually, the hospital of business. Well done.
Hi, I'm Astrid, and thank you both for being here. We live in the neighborhood for Canteen and enjoy all of that. Being a Cal alum from CNR, I can vouch for all the nutritious basis of the grains. 2 questions. One for you is, when is the next book coming out? And for Robert, this is on the Yule board ticket. I haven't looked at the menu, but is and making it a California fresh version of that can be a very, I don't know how do you say it, but you touched on it. It's a landmine of traditional heavy Yule board kind of stuff where you remake it, and I just wondered if that's a fun challenge.
For your board?
A Yule board that would be like California light or fresh, or remaking some of it.
We changed it. It's so funny with your board. It's like, I remember the first year I opened the restaurant in San Francisco, and it was the first year, and I was like, and my guests started talking about, are you doing Christmas table? And I was like, I was not even thinking about it. I was like, maybe I should. So we was like, okay, let's do Yule board, Christmas table, and in Sweden, the restaurants kind of stops in end of November, and everybody starts doing Christmas table. And that some people eat Christmas food every day, but it's so many is doing Christmas tables. It's just such a tradition. So when I do my Christmas table now, I use it's very vegetable heavy, with the seasonal produce, when I'm using it, and I do a big buffet in the restaurant in December. So we have 6 seatings, and we also do to-goes, and I've been doing this since 2012, So it's been, and people still asking for it, even when it's springtime. They're like, still doing the Christmas table. I was like, we have to wait a little bit here. I'm not even that page, right? But what I'm trying to say is, yes, the Christmas table in Sweden as well are changing, right? So when they do that, they speak for a lot of their guests, more vegetables, thinking about the vegans, so you can see, the changes. I mean, some people put sushi on the Christmas table. I don't know, you know what I mean, right? But I'm trying to make it, so it speaks for the area, for the area we are in, and it's super fun. It's super fun.
The book is coming out. The date right now is May 19th. So I'm just finishing up with the last edits now, and then it'll be shipped off for printing. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for sharing. My name is Christina. I am a full-time MBA student in Barcelona at the AC Business School, and right now I'm doing my exchange term here at Berkeley. So I can relate to what you've just said, because there are times that I'm craving for Spanish food as well. But normally I just take recommendations from my Spanish friends living here or just going to social media. So I think it's interesting that you mentioned like the power of influencer economy, the whole social media promotion as well. I'm curious about like how do you really incorporate that social media tactics like into your daily operations? Because I'm sure like there are trends like back in Nordics right now as well. So like also how do you incorporate that trendy stuff like back in Nordics, and also like incorporate what is popular right here and come up like with new items, and also like educate the local customers and promote your restaurant and the items as well.
I think social media gives a great opportunity to tell some stories, to be able, I think it's a great way to give a backstory to things, or how you arrived at what you're doing, or what it means to you personally on a personal level. I feel like that resonates quite well with the average social media viewer. I think it can be hard to do it, especially on the spot when things are busy. Things may seem, you may not know the reference point for why something's on the menu or why it's important. When you're at Canteen, I just feel like there's always a better opportunity, or you can use newsletters for that as well. But I think educating your staff as well. We've also had some staff members, those that have been with us for a while, where we fund a trip to Scandinavia also, so that they're able to have a reference for what we're talking about, and it all kind of falls into place and makes sense, which is, enriching for them as well as for us, that they're able to kind of, even though despite them maybe not having any kind of reference earlier, or, having a background or a heritage from Scandinavia, that they can adopt that and then go from there and make their own new ideas and references to traditional foods and, their own takes on it.
What I always learn is like the biggest thing is people love stories, So if you tell a story, I think that's my approach, because like I say, I'm not doing social media or anything like that, but I always say to my staff, it's like, always tell a story, because I think mostly everybody loves stories, and it keeps that interest too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think we'll stop here. I would just like to point out, looping back to Paul's presentation this morning, that these two speakers today were the first E in the HEPEC, which is the entrepreneurs who are here in the area. And I'm really happy that we got their local perspective on what it means to work in restaurants here in the Bay. So thank you to Paul.
Thank you very much.
To Robert and Nicole.
Thank you.